Hello, my little ravens, and welcome back to the channel on this Samhain night. Now, I know this is a holy Sabbath for me, but I've decided that I have a obligation to also post something for Samhain, as it is, well, almost customary amongst the YouTube community to do so. You've probably seen a lot of videos, documentaries, maybe even animations on witches, werewolves, ghosts. But my channel is to do with magic and witchcraft anyway. So how, pray, do I do a Samhain special without being too, well, how should one say this, cliche? Well, I decided to read you an extract from this book that I'm reading by a chap called Konstantinos, who wrote a book on vampires known as The Occult Truth. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Take what he says with a grain of salt. But I've decided I will read you a couple of extracts from the chapter, which is chapter 4, on the mortal blood drinkers of the past. I'm going to skip Dracula because everybody knows Dracula. Not everyone knows Elizabeth Bathory, the Blood Countess. She was a mortal blood drinker, according to Konstantinos, who also been immortalized in literature and film, although rarely accurately. Bathory was born in Transylvania in 1560 and lived there until she married Slovak Count Ferenek Nadaste in 1575. The couple then lived in Nadaste's castle in the Slovak Republic. Now, what he forgets to mention is that she was the daughter of one of the most powerful aristocratic lords in that time in Hungary. So, let's continue. While heading her household, the always cruel countess began to punish her servants in vicious ways. That's according to speculation or certain historical records. Eventually, she began to kill some of them. Her husband died in 1604, but she was never implicated in his death, and Bathory apparently kept on murdering until suspicion about her activities rose in 1610. By this time, approximately 650 victims were said to have died at her hands. But what did she do with them? The first important thing that we have to remember, and this is my additions by the way, is that Bathory was extremely vicious, according to historical documents, to female servants. And I know this is going to be important for later. So, in 1611, Bathory was convicted for her crimes and sentenced to life imprisonment in a room in a castle with no windows. That was also the thing. She would have normally been executed, but due to the fact she held so much power and she came from such an esteemed family, the judges felt that they couldn't kill her. They simply had to get rid of her. They just simply had to pick up the rug and wipe it all underneath it. Anyway, only a small hole was made for food and water to be passed in to her. She died in that room 3 years later. Just as she was locked away, so were the records of what she had done. A royal edict declared that she was never to be mentioned. Years later, the documents surfaced that detailed what Bathory had done and helped her earn the title of the Blood Countess. Raymond T. McNally, one of the authors of Dracula, Prince of Many Faces, wrote a book about Bathory titled Dracula Was a Woman, in Search of the Blood Countess of Transylvania. The title refers to the possibility that Bathory influenced Stoker's placement of the novel in Transylvania, even though Bathory started committing her crimes after she moved away from that district. More importantly, the book is valuable because it contains some of the legends that arose about Bathory's practices. The most famous of this was the belief that the Countess killed young ladies to bathe in their blood. Basically, what happened was this serving girl was brushing her hair in the way that Elizabeth didn't like. And she had a temper, and whenever she had a temper, she would lash out. On this occasion, the girl started bleeding from the hits that Elizabeth gave her. And when the blood touched Elizabeth's skin, she thought that her skin looked younger. Yeah, and as Konstantinos says, she supposedly did that to become younger. In one instant, a girl accused Bathory of biting her. That method of attack, along with the bathing in blood, has sparked interest in the Countess and surrounded her with vampiric legends, although some of it may have been overly speculated due to Dracula. I'm just saying. Could be. However, like Dracula, it can't be proven whether the Countess felt the urge to drink the blood of her victims, obviously. It has been speculated that evidence and testimony in the Bathory trial was kept from the public. More than one writer has assumed that some of those lost records included descriptions of various acts of vampirism that Bathory might have performed. All of this is speculation at this point. Of particular note is Gabriel René, who McNally cites as having said that Bathory's acts of vampirism and ritual murder were kept out of the trial records. Let's say for a moment that the Blood Countess did not actually drink her victim's blood and only bathed in it with apparently the intent of becoming younger. What would make Bathory believe that doing so would make her appear younger? McNally includes a particular interesting translation from a German scholar called Michael Wagener in his book that shows how Bathory could have come to think the way that she did. Here is an excerpt. Elizabeth used to dress up well in order to please her husband. On one occasion, her chambermaid saw something wrong with her headdress and as a recompense for observing it, received a severe box on the ear that blood gushed from her nose and spurted on her mistress's face. Oh, it's this example. Yeah, the one I told you, only I heard that it was something to do with her hair. Anyway, when the blood drops were washed off her face, her skin appeared more beautiful, whiter, more transparent on the spots where the blood has been. Elizabeth therefore formed the resolve to bathe her face and her entire body in human blood as to enhance her beauty. The account goes on to mention the details of her Bathory with the help of her assistants, one of whom was a dwarf. Yeah, the story gets a little sordid. Would kill her victims and bathe in their blood at 4 a.m. Is this account even accurate? Even if the first couple of lines are true, we know that the Countess was a person who obviously took appearance very seriously and could act viciously when it came to matters concerning it. As for whether the skin of the Countess became whiter, more transparent after being splashed with blood, I'm sure many medical professionals would disagree. It seems that in her rage, the Countess had delusions that she didn't want to surrender at a later time. If she was a cruel person, as historians claim, the rejuvenating blood baths might have been a convenient excuse for her subconscious for her behavior. Until the late 19th century, investigations of the activities of moral blood drinkers and mortal blood drinkers were usually surrounded with a great deal of superstition, as one might expect for that time, making it difficult to tell exactly what happened. In other words, ridiculous accusations were made about the status of the blood drinkers' souls. Christians will do that. And not enough factual evidence was compiled about the crimes that they committed, obviously, because they were kept out of the historical record. The following case is a good example. It is short due to lack of accurate information available, but it illustrates how easily facts can become distorted and even interpreted in courts of the past. Yeah, but the thing is, Elizabeth Bathory, even in Queen Elizabeth I's time, because that's the time period which she lived, even Elizabeth I, I'm not sure if this is true, but what I heard is that Elizabeth I wouldn't even consider meeting Elizabeth Bathory, despite the fact that, with regards to their rank, they were quote-unquote equals. So, yeah, this woman has a history. Now, the second I want to talk about is Gilles de Rais. I don't know if I pronounce it correctly because it's been years since I've had French, so please bear with me. Born in 1404, Gilles de Rais grew up to become a great soldier of the French army. It has been written that he and Joan of Arc shared the battlefield against the English. In addition to his military fame, Gilles was quite wealthy and of the upper class. Finally, he was considered a bloodthirsty killer. Gilles was arrested and brought to trial on the accusation that he was responsible for the rising number of missing boys from the area. According to his peers and his own admission, Gilles was involved in researching and practicing magic and alchemy, which was not unusual as several wealthy individuals of that era delved into the arcane arts. That is not something that everybody knows. You might have heard of a lot of witch trials, you may have heard of the Malleus Maleficarum being written. But what many people do not know is that, hypocritically enough, many aristocratic houses would employ magicians, seers, and alchemists. Anyway, it is not certain, however, whether those acts made him a suspicious individual in the eyes of his peers, or if hard evidence existed to support his arrest. It is possible that Gilles' peers simply feared the occult, and for that religious life and God-fearing society, I think the answer is a definite yes. As was common in those days, Gilles was tortured during the trial in hopes of obtaining a confession, because torture is so likely to get a decent, accurate confession. Note the heavy fucking sarcasm. His torturers were not disappointed. Gilles admitted to torturing the young boys. Well, obviously, if you're tortured, you're going to admit to practically anything. Drinking their blood and murdering them. Yeah, that hysterical confession and the amount of self-incriminating information is supposedly contained with the sensational association between Gilles' alleged crimes and his occult interests make it difficult to tell what really happened. Just how much of Gilles' confession was coaxed out of him, as was done in the witch trials. See? The occult practices of de Rey may have been referred to as satanic, especially in those times. If he did practice evil magic, it is even more likely that he could have performed the act he admitted to, making de Rey a monster, the likes of which hadn't been seen often in history. Gilles was found guilty and executed in 1440. His remains were burned, obviously, because otherwise if he was a vampire, his body could arise out of the grave even after death. It's one of the reasons why people post-mortem would stake into the hearts of suspected vampires was to stop them from coming back alive, and one of the ways to ensure that a vampire would never come back alive was to burn the body. Now let's turn our attention to a few more recent vampires. There is a great deal of evidence available to support the factual nature of these mortal blood drinkers. Yeah. I don't know. With Bathory, because of the fact that there is so little evidence to contradict what was being said, and it was so overly embellished, it's quite difficult to see where the boundary between truth and fiction actually is. And with Gilles de Rey, well, I think it was just a matter of, here is a person who is known for practicing the occult. Boys have been going missing. I wonder who we could blame this on. I mean, if de Rey actually had any association with it, any evidence presented that he did have something to do with it, and he willingly confessed to it, not under torture, then there might have been substance to it. However, as many of us probably know, torture is not an effective method to get reliable information, no matter how many times our governments still do it in this day and age. Yeah, to practice the occult in the 15th century was a dangerous business. I hope you have enjoyed the reading, my little ravens. I'm sorry if I badgered in now and again, I just cannot help myself. It's the academic in me that continuously fights with the writer. One half fact, one half fiction, and they're constantly just in war with each other. I'll see if I can upload some more interesting stories or facts or case studies for you, my little ravens. But if I cannot do it, then I bid you a happy Samhain, or a happy Halloween, if that is what you believe, or happy All Hallows Eve, and I hope you have a very good day. Raven Rose, over and out.